This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment.
All right, welcome back to Studio East with Soggy Sock Gang. This is episode 69. Nice.
Soggy socks because Sean spilled water everywhere.
The ground was looking thirsty, and I just didn't pay attention to where the wires were. But we'll be discussing toxic charity, welfare charity, stuff like that. And hitting on a couple other topics that are related to that. The book that we'll be focusing on is Toxic Charity. You can see it right here. I listened to the audiobook. It was pretty solid. I believe the author himself narrated it. I always prefer audiobooks where the author himself is doing it and not some random guy off of WeWork or, one of those little gig websites. It's always rough to listen to some random dude that never read the book before read it for the first time. But Ted, you want to give us a shout out?
Yes. The shout out for this episode goes to the almost 90 people who have downloaded and read the How to Naturally Increase Your Testosterone by 69% ebook.
It's 90 people walking around with a lot more than they need.
Yeah. If you want to get a copy of that ebook for free, simply head to our website, weightsandwealth.com. It's about 35, 40 pages, I think, Nick. We wrote it last year. It's got over 120 studies referenced in it. And I think it's a lot of really good information. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback on it. A lot of people that have read it and then gotten their blood work done and improved their testosterone levels, which goes a long way towards your quality of life, not just your gains. So.
Not really that we need studies. You should just listen to us regardless. Evidence is Ted's word. So.
Nick, would you like to give us the wealth wisdom?
This week's wealth wisdom is that if you're going to give money, make sure that it's going to a good charity, as we will get into later. You can just do some Google searches, or if you're a bigger donor, you can probably get their financial statements and actually look over them and see how much aid is actually going to people who need it and not just to people who are managing the charity.
100%. Just off the top of my head, give to Salvation Army and not the Red Cross. Salvation Army has an over 95% going into charitable works, whereas the Red Cross is, I think, less than 50%.
Okay.
So just right off the bat, I can name two comparisons of which one you should give to, which one you shouldn't to. But our intro article it's not really an article. It's a post from Sean Baker, former Army physician, doctor extraordinaire, holds multiple world records in fitness, particularly on the rower
and deadlifting.
He is an absolute specimen of an athlete. And he is most well known for being one of the largest advocates of the carnivore diet. And he posted this a screenshot of Dr. Michael Greger, who is on the opposite end of the spectrum, is not a known athlete of any kind of athletic pursuit, has a horrible hairline, and kind of looks like a melted ice cream cone. So the book is How Not to Age. And I don't know if you want to look at Dr. Sean Baker versus Dr. Michael Greger. I think I can tell just by looking at him who I want to listen to.
Sean, you shouldn't make fun of people's appearance, all right? And that seems like you're going with anecdote here, comparing a carnivore doctor to a vegan doctor. Mm-hmm. He is actually a doctor. He's a medical doctor.
Yes, he is.
No air quotes needed up there. Yeah. Those are misplaced air quotes.
He is a legitimate doctor, but I don't know. One of the best pieces of advice that I've read about and stuff is go to a fit doctor, because if your doctor's fat and overweight and unhealthy, is he probably going to give you good advice? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely depends there. Like, if you're getting a surgery done, you probably don't care if the doctor's in shape or not, right? But there definitely is an issue, I think, in Western medicine where a lot of doctors don't look the part. And if they're recommending drugs to you and they're not talking about your lifestyle at all, and you can tell by looking at them that they probably aren't very healthy, I feel like that can be concerning. At least for me, I wouldn't want to. I mean, this is probably why we don't really go to doctors. But
I think we should add a required second residency of bodybuilding to all medical schools. Got to understand the human body, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, there definitely is a difference, I think. When you look at a lot of people who have been vegan for a while, you can tell that they are missing some essential nutrients just by the way their skin, hair, and nails look. And like for yourself, when you're looking at your health, those are just biomarkers you can look at. How's your skin? How's your hair? How's your nails? If you work with a good trainer, they'll probably ask you these questions and look into these things. They're good markers of what is going on inside your body. So that's just a picture from Sean Baker. We would never want to make fun of anyone's appearance on this show, though, Sean. So. This year so far, I've been doing the cold plunge. I got a cold plunge for Christmas, and during the single-digit degree weather days we had with that cold front that kind of came across the nation in mid-January, it's pretty tough. Water was in the 30s for a lot of cold plunges in a row there, but for those I was only doing like 30 seconds. But
I've only done cold plunges in an actual river.
Okay.
I've never done like a real like ice bath thing. I'll be out in Virginia and my cousins live out in kind of the sticks, and we'll just run down to the Shenandoah and jump in when it's iced over.
I've done it here a couple times.
Yeah, Nick and I used to do that. I think it was not this past December, but the December before, when we were recording the initial batch. If you go back to like the first episodes, before we would record, or just like before we would go lift, we would go into the ocean and do a cold plunge.
Yeah. I did it once this year so far. It was like 50 degrees out, so it wasn't that tough.
Yeah. We're in Charleston, so it doesn't get that cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, try that in Rochester.
Yeah. If you guys want, we can do an episode on cold plunges. We have gotten 1 or 2 questions, but just let us know in the DMs if you'd be interested in a cold plunge episode.
From a cold plunge?
From cold plunge. It'll last about 2 minutes long. But yeah, just hit the DMs and let us know if you'd be interested in that. We can dive into the book now, Toxic Charity. We all read this book, and we'll basically tell you what we learned from it, and just from already talking a little bit about it, Sean and I think had some disagreements on the book. So I think that's good for the audience to hear 2 different points of view. So we'll see what Nick has to say as well. Sean and I had a lot of time in the car ride from El Paso and Nashville to get here.
A little
we just
bit.
Talked a little
we
bit.
mentioned it. I mean, I don't disagree with the thesis of the book that, regular aid to whether it's a village, an individual, a country, on any societal scale will eventually create a dependency mechanism. Like, I think in the book he said, like, around the 6th time that you give it to, whether like it's this town or this organization or this individual, that's when like they kind of become dependent and stop thinking for themselves. It was more of just like he kind of went into this like kind of bleeding heart liberal idea, like where like these like the benefactors will never understand where these poor people are coming from. And I just thought it was a little like, I don't know, it kind of turned me off from the book. Like up to that point, I was like, okay, this guy making sense, it's good. And I still agree with pretty much most of what the guy wrote about, but it was just this kind of odd, like, self-deprecating, like, woe to me, like, I will never understand what these people go through, so don't listen to me because I'm not from a poor area or from an oppressed minority. I don't know. I thought it was really weird, just like kind of thing to throw in the book that really added no value.
Well, let's go through maybe what the book says first. So the thing Sean was mentioning with the sixth time, we can run through that real quick. I wrote it down from the book. It's basically the charity progression. So what he put was give once and you elicit appreciation. Give twice and you create anticipation. Give 3 times and you create expectation. Give 4 times and it becomes entitlement. Give 5 times and you establish dependency. That's what Sean was getting at. It's kind of a main theme of the book. But going back to just like an outline of the book, I think a quote from like the first page that I wrote down really kind of sums up the book. While we are very generous in charitable giving, much of that money is either wasted or actually harms the people that it is targeted to help. So basically he goes through examples in the book of how he mainly talks about churches, but he talks about charities in general, but it's mainly through like a church lens. But he talks a lot about in different countries, whether it's in Africa or in Central America, oftentimes people will go on mission trips and they'll donate a bunch of money or maybe even help build a school or something or a well in these communities, but they don't actually help the community by giving them a wealth creating asset, right? It's the old give a man a fish or teach him to fish kind of adage, right? So the first half of the book talked about how when you give to people in need, it usually doesn't wind up helping them and it sometimes hurts them. And then the second half of the book focuses more on how can you give responsibly. So I think that's probably the part that you're talking about that turned you off, because I think he does go into like if you're not on the ground with the people and relating to them and building friendships with them, then you're not going to be able to give responsibly. Is that?
I mean, it wasn't like that part that I disagreed with. It was, I think, his way of expressing it. I fully understand that, and I think that, to truly understand a problem, you have to be on the ground and doing it yourself, being there yourself. But I think it was just his attitude that I didn't like. It was kind of this weird, I don't know, left a bad taste in my mouth. But I don't disagree with him. I actually thought there were some pretty funny anecdotes in it where he was talking about this one South American town where it was like a school or something, and they had gotten repainted like 6 times in one summer, just because all these different
like repainting something.
Like why don't they just be like, hey, like maybe we don't need another coat of paint. Why don't we like go do something else?
Which I mean, like that was also part of his point, though, is that like these towns want people bring in money essentially because they also provide them with money.
Yes.
And that if you tell them that they can't really help, then they're not really going to give you the money anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why you end up getting things like a church being paid 6 times.
Yeah, but it was also like not only that, but it's kind of that fear that you talked about, like the director's like, oh well, I don't want to say no. And so like, and then there's also the expectation from the people going on the mission trip that they get to do the labor themselves, even though they have no experience with working with concrete and plumbing and electricity. Like you're sending a bunch of like 15 to 18-year-old high school students to Guatemala, and like I guarantee you there are 3 dozen dudes in that village that can do that job 5 times faster and 5 times more efficiently, but you just pay $2,000 to go to South America or to Africa to do this. And you want to swing the hammer.
Yeah, he had a lot of stats in there too about charity, and one thing that blew my mind is how much is spent on religious mission trips. He said $2.5 to $5 billion a year are spent on these mission trips, and a lot of that money just goes into like tourist kind of little knickknacks and things where it's not something that's actually helping grow any kind of business in the area. It's not helping them with any kind of wealth producing asset. And I heard a really good example of this actually all the way back in middle school. We had a janitor, Josh, that was from Haiti. And I don't know if it was like a story he told or if someone else had told it, but basically they said like when everyone donates all these like clothes to Haiti, you know, like donate all the t-shirts and stuff, right? But then when that happens, if there's a
like when the Bears
t-shirt.
won the 2006 Super Bowl, all those t-shirts go to Haiti. It's a different dimension.
But when that happens, like, so they get all this influx of t-shirts, but then if there's actually like a business in that town in Haiti that produces t-shirts, well, now they can't sell those t-shirts. And now that business goes out of business. So now you're actually hurting the local businesses down there, and you thought you were doing something good by donating to the poor, but now you actually just put the poor out of business and destroyed their opportunity to actually create wealth. So, it was really an eye-opening book to me, because typically you think, oh, I'm giving to charity, I'm doing a good thing, but oftentimes that charity can actually hurt the very people you're trying to help, which is, it's a pretty wild idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to control it. You know, like I just signed up for the Ancient Order of Hibernians. It's like Knights of Columbus, but geared towards Irish Catholics. And one of their things is that they do a lot of charitable works, but like any type of financial charity that they do is local. And so it's like, hey, you know, Bobby Kennedy's, you know, daughter is getting chemo, so we're going to support him because we know him. Okay. You know, so it's not like, hey, we're just giving it to some random person on the other side of the world. It's like it is specific. Someone you know in your community is getting that money to help, and I think that is a good way of doing it. Is that like you can personally vet that this money is going towards a good cause, and you can vouch for the character of the individual.
I feel like I have a really good recent example of that. Our town got hit by a tornado, or city got hit by a tornado about a month ago. By the time this podcast comes out, several months ago. But FEMA showed up on base like, I don't know, a month and a half and put up like a booth in the PX that said like coming soon, FEMA response. Like a month and a half after the tornado. The next day after the tornado, one of the churches in the city put out on Facebook, go to this church to help. And that church was like the center where all the volunteers met, where everything was getting donated, and immediately went out and started helping the community. So a local response is, I mean, the founding fathers knew this, a local response is going to be better than a federal response almost every single time, right? Wild idea to people in today's world for some reason. But that kids is how government is supposed to work. You're supposed to start at the local level and then go to state and then go to the federal. But yeah. No,
it is kind of funny. FEMA is, I don't know. We don't need to delve into the federal emergency relief.
But going into what Sean was saying, I've got it right here. They also have an oath for compassionate service in the book that he says he would like to see all charities take up. So the oath for compassionate service is never do for the poor what they have or could have the capacity to do for themselves. Limit one-way giving to emergency situations. Strive to empower the poor through employment, lending, and investing, using grants sparingly to reinforce achievements. Subordinate self-interest to the needs of those being served. Listen closely to those you seek to help, especially to what is not being said. Unspoken feelings may contain essential clues to effective service. Above all, do no harm. One of the big points in there is maybe like the last 2 chapters of the book, which is strive to empower the poor through employment, and then lending and investing. That was a big thing in the book, was micro-lending and helping communities build. I've said it like several times, but just a good phrase from the book, wealth-producing assets. I thought that was one of the really good ideas from the book, is that's how the communities are going to lift themselves up, isn't through relying on aid that comes every month, but through actually building the community.
Yeah, like he talked about, building like water wells and stuff like that, and then setting up a system of bookkeeping and infrastructure so that that village could then sell water to other, local villages and extend their, aqueduct or pipeline system into other areas, gave them the chance to like expand on it and like be self-directed. And then on like the micro lending, he also talked about, you know, buying like a $50 loan to a woman so that she could buy a sewing machine, you know, just stuff like that, which empowers people to like ramp up their production or just save time and labor by, you know, giving them these, you know, modern technologies that enable them to just kind of go from like hand knitting a sweater to, you know, not mass producing, but, you know, producing things more efficiently. Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference between just giving someone, you know, a sweatshirt or giving them the ability to make 10 in a day.
Nick, you got any, what was your favorite thing that you learned from the book?
I mean, one of my biggest takeaways was to really just, I mean, I guess this kind of goes both, so like giving people their dignity essentially. And so one example he gave was that there were these people during Christmas and they just showed up to this like poor family's house from their church or something and then started giving them presents, and like the dad kind of left essentially just because he was embarrassed.
Yeah.
But I think this also comes back to, you know, setting people up to be self-sustaining, because I think when you just give somebody even in a foreign country who's in abject poverty, if you just give them things, it kind of still removes their dignity and it kind of lessens their drive to become self-sustaining.
Yeah, that was like in the middle of the book, and that jumped out at me too. It said that like the husband felt really emasculated that he couldn't provide for his family. And when you're giving to like a Christmas toy drive, you would never think that that's what's happening when you're giving to that toy drive. So just a really eye-opening book all around.
And then one of the things that he said to kind of counteract that is to, you know, like people can still bring in toys to be like quote unquote given away, but then they can kind of set up like a discount store so that parents can still buy their kids toys and feel that kind of sense of like, I gave this to them and this was given to me to give to them.
Yeah. So a slight change, but completely changes the mental framework around it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's something like going back to his oath is, you know, subordinating self-interest to the needs of those being served is, you know, some people make the argument that every single action you take is narcissistic in some kind of way. You know, like you're going to give money because
like there's no true altruism in the world.
Like it's nearly impossible. So like you can kind of see that in these examples, like these people, like not like these people, but like, you know, people that are doing these charitable works, they're doing it because it makes them feel good. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason, obviously they want to help, and, you know, there's all sorts of other reasons, but part of the reason is, you know, seeing the immediate effects of your generosity and like, you know, community building and stuff like that. And I do think that insulating yourself from the immediate effects of your charitable giving, is a way to like kind of prevent yourself from getting too egotistical with it. Like the discount store example. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And then he also included another author's work throughout the book. There's a book called Debt Aid by Dambisa Moyo, who's an economist. She was born in Zambia, and she's written a lot about how aid has impacted Africa. So this is like part of the stats that were included in the book. She said African reliance on aid has trapped many Africans in an endless cycle of dependency, corruption, market interference. That's like what we were saying with the t-shirts, where it destroys the local business, and poverty. And that 85% of the money flowing into African countries never actually reaches the target people. So she's a pretty well-respected economist and has put out a bunch of recommendations for African countries, some of which have taken up her recommendations, and they are to get off aid, promote entrepreneurship, promote free trade, invest in infrastructure, secure reasonable loans, not grants. That way the people or the countries have to pay them back, and they're actually working towards progress, and encouraging stable home ownership. Now, what jumped out to me about this list is what is like the essence of the American dream, right? So this is what America is supposed to be, right? If you look back at early writings on America, if you look at Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville, he talks about some of these things, how people back then in the early 1800s didn't want charity from the government, right?
It was the mark of shame.
It was shameful for people to accept charity from their neighbors, right? Not that you don't want your neighbor to help you out with like tasks or something, but like to just get actual aid. Whereas today we have the explosion of the Great Society from Lyndon Johnson and the welfare state. And that's like another thing from this book. It kind of talked about how we know that the welfare state is bad for Americans, but then we as Americans push this welfare state out to the rest of the world with like our model of charity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I figured maybe if you're being super cynical, we've bogged ourselves down to this. We got to keep the rest of the world down too.
That's terrible.
If you're being a political realist, you know, like if you wanna sow the seeds of chaos and lukewarm economic activity, you see what happened in America with the implementation of the welfare state and just giving out like freebies to everybody, then you just do it to the rest of the world so nobody else can catch up because you've already got a huge lead,
Well, I guess we'll end with that. A rising tide raises all boats, and a lowering tide can lower all boats as well. Do you guys have any last points to add?
I mean, about like the list that you just went through, what kind of surprised me was he said, I mean, he didn't give exact stats.
It's a she, sorry.
She?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. My narrator was a he. I didn't get the original author of the book like Sean.
Oh, no, sorry. The author of Toxic Charity is a he. Dambisa Moyo is a she.
Oh, okay.
I thought you were talking about Dead Aid still. I'm sorry.
Well, he mentioned in the book that the loan repayment rate was extremely high, which kind of surprised me a little bit. He didn't say exactly how much, but he thinks it's from the fact that people in these poorer countries tend to be more entrepreneurial and very hardworking because they need to just scrap just to survive. So that the loan repayment rate just tends to be high.
Yeah, you see that with like immigrants that come to America. They're very entrepreneurial and very hardworking compared to the native population.
100%. So, Nick, African bonds up. That's what I'm hearing.
Let's before we check out on this one, let's get a rating out of 10 for the book from everyone. Nick, what would you give it out of 10?
I would give it a 6 just because I feel like he said the same things over and over and over again. I mean, to kind of drive it home, but he did say the same things over.
I mean, the book it's very in-depth and detailed, but he did repeat himself a lot. And then he had his tonal shift that I didn't like. I would probably say a 6 too. It's good information, but it's not that deep. Yeah. It's like here's the core point and here's why it matters. And then the other 75% of the book was just anecdotes and like examples, which are good and like help you retain and understand the problem more thoroughly. But I don't know, it's not that deep.
Yeah. I would rate it a little bit higher. I would say 7.8 because when I read a book like this, if it changes my mind on things or enlightens me to new ideas, makes me see another side of an argument that I haven't heard before, something like that.
I've always been against aid in any form, so.
If it makes me learn something I didn't know about or really just opens my mind to a new argument, then I think it's a really good book for me to have read. So I would give it a little bit higher, but I think overall we would recommend this book to our audience, Toxic Charity, especially I think if you are involved in your church in how it spends and how it does charity, I think this would be a must read.
100%. If you're someone that gives a significant amount of money to your church, whether you're like tithing or you just give money for the tax write-off, like whatever reason you're giving money that goes into some sort of, not-for-profit or stuff like that, understand where it's going and understand the effects of that, and then tailor your donations.
And don't give to the Red Cross.
And don't give.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.